It is an absolute stunner of a day. The garden's looking really good. So let me show you around my garden in June. This way. Since I spread wood chip all over this area, it really has taken on new life. It just looks so much nicer. A lot of containers along the sides, and the two birdies beds are filled with calendula, which you see here. They're not yet blooming, and herbs. So we planted up this herb garden in the last monthly garden video. And then beyond it is the strawberry pallet planter. And I have been picking strawberries off of it. You can see one right here. There are tons in here though. You can see all the green ones. Uh-oh, one has fallen down. But as you can see, it's a really prolific planter. It looks great. And then over here, I want to show you something. I think each garden has an area where there are plants kind of stashed away, either because they're not blooming at that particular moment, or you just haven't really found a place to put them yet. And my area is right here along the side of the polycrub. It's not too hidden away because I want to make sure that they're doing okay, and I'm watering them. And 3 of the featured plants that are over here are these right here at the very front, so I can keep a real close eye on them. I have a loganberry plant here, a boysenberry, which is an American type fruit. It's a hybrid. And back here, this is one of my last remaining Joan J raspberries. I've got some news about that. But before I tell you that bad news, I've got some good news, because these autumn fruiting raspberries, which gave fruit last year, are now putting on a second flush. So it's really early on in the season. And in my recent video on raspberry trellises, I explained that with autumn fruiting raspberries, they tend to fruit towards the top of the canes the very first year in autumn. And then if you don't cut them down the next year, they'll have a flush of berries more towards the lower parts of the canes. And that's what's happened here. So I trimmed off the top, and all of the areas down below on these older canes, they are fruiting with a really early harvest. And then the new canes here, this greenwood here, that's going to produce some berries later on this year. As for the other raspberries, they're a bit further down in the garden. They didn't have a great year last year, and so over the winter I replanted both beds, tidied up the area, did a recent video on raspberry trellises, and by now the raspberries should all be filling in really thickly, you know, like the one that's over here in the container. They're not though. And in fact, a lot of the canes are coming up, growing leaves and dying. And I've done a little bit of looking online, and from what I can tell, I think that my raspberries have a fairly common raspberry disease that you can find in Scotland and other parts of Britain called Cytophora. And there are quite a few different strains of Cytophora, apparently, so this is all new to me. And it causes catastrophic dying off, and it lingers on in the soil, and especially if it's wet soil, so over the winter, or if you've got heavy clay soil like I do. So I'm just gonna have a watch of that area, and there are still some raspberries in it. I have cleared it from the center, and I've planted some corn there instead. We'll see how that does, see if it's affected by anything in the soil, and just watch this space. One garden project that has been a success and isn't giving me any stress at all is the ponds. And I recently relined it, redid the design, sowed seeds around it, and it has matured into this really lovely space to enjoy for us sitting here on the bench, but also wildlife. And you can see lots of honeybees buzzing over here. And what they're doing is coming down and landing on the duckweed, which I'm tolerating, and then drinking water, and they're taking it back to the colony. And you can see quite a few bees on the side of this stone as well. Do you see them here? And they're doing the same thing. So they're collecting water to take back to the hive to help with making honey. The plants that are inside and coming up, we've got water hawthorn, which is the white flower there, and they bloom fairly early. And the water lilies with the round leaves, you can see that there are buds just coming up right now, so they're going to take over with the flowering. And under the surface, there are plants that add oxygen to the water, so that helps to keep the water clear. And then of course, these gorgeous geums and then the wildflowers that are planted around. It's just such a stunning little place. This entire area, so the pond, the beds, the containers, and also the polycrub behind me, these are all spaces that are really close to the house, easy to come out and enjoy, easy to come out and take care of. And so that's why I've chosen to put all the plants here that I have done. So herbs that I can harvest on the go. So just come out here and harvest some chervil or harvest some rosemary and take it into the kitchen. Pots that I can water really easily. The bench to sit on, obviously. And then let's go inside the polycrub and I'll show you what's growing in here. I sometimes envy people who have hotter climates than I do, because you can grow a lot of things outdoors that is just not possible here, or that you get really poor yields. So things like tomatoes and aubergines and peppers, which is what I'm growing in here, along with some more unusual things, such as these cucamelons. And you can see they are really vigorous, growing up this trellis. And the sweet potatoes that are over here as well, they're starting to put out their vines, and these are sprawlers naturally. And so to train them to grow against a trellis, you really do have to put a little bit more work into it and guide them to wind up through the trellis. And this is the best way, I think, to grow them under cover. So these are the Japanese sweet potatoes that I've grown for a few years now. This one here is a purple sweet potato that I got from the supermarket. I've also tucked in lots of small plants around the sides and in the back. This is a lemon basil or a lemon basil. And I wasn't sure if we would have a good summer this year. Last year was terrible. And so I've put a courgette in here, zucchini plants. And you can see that the leaves are all nibbled around the edges. And I was scratching my head. I'm like, what has been after my plants? And I think over here, yeah, an entire one is missing. Well, I caught the perpetrators in the act, and you wouldn't believe it, but it's woodlice. So roly-polies. And that's why I have some oranges here. Now, I'm not going to be removing any more of them, because you can see that the leaves are looking pretty okay now. So I think balance is back. But if you have a problem with woodlice, if you just put an empty orange half over the soil, it collects them. So just like that. And then in my case, I've just taken them and relocated them to the bottom of the garden. It's the same with this one. Let's have a look. I'll bet there's tons. Oh yes, absolute tons. So if I start to see problems again with leaves being nibbled, I'll be removing more of them. And I should also say that woodlice are generally not a problem in the garden. They are recyclers. But if there's a population explosion, or if there's a lack of dead plant material, which is likely the case in my polycrub, they will attack living plants. Gosh, 4 years being at this house. I'm reminded of that as well by these roses. These are David Austin roses. The variety is called Generous Gardener. And I had them planted at our old house. And they were only in the ground a couple of years when we sold that house and bought this one. And it was a real dilemma. Do I leave them in the ground for the new owner to enjoy, or do I dig them up and try to transplant them? And I didn't even know if they would survive the transplanting, but holy moly, look at this. They look stunning. And it's a good thing that I did take them, because the guy who bought our old house leveled the garden. So everything went, all the raised beds, everything. We saw photos. It was pretty shocking, but I saved these. And the smell over here, the fragrance is incredible. And I have been busy drying these roses because we have had some winds come through. and I've got tons of rose petals, and I'm going to be making some rose water next week as well. These are great for making rose water and using in projects and skincare, but I also bought some damask roses this year as bare root, and I planted them along the side here and over here. And the first of the flowers has opened, and although the flowers are still really small on these small plants, oh my goodness, the fragrance is just out of this world. If you're here for the vegetables, don't worry, we'll get to those next. But first, let's have a look at the wildflower bank. It is looking very verdant, very green at the moment, but there are tons of flowers coming on. And look, I've got a butterfly. This is exactly why I wanted to plant something like this. Not only does it look good, but it's going to be supporting so many pollinators, and there are bees and hoverflies in here too. This area here in the middle, this is the older patch. So it's a good few years old. Very few weeds in it. It's all perennial. And then the areas on the left and over here on the right, these are newly sown. So I just sowed the seeds earlier this spring. And once they get established, I shouldn't have to do much. There are some annuals in here. They'll self-seed, the rest are perennials. And like this area here in the middle, it should just be very, very low maintenance. I have had quite a few people ask me about the seed mix that I've used and if it's going to be available to the public. I still don't really have any information on that because it was given to me as a trial, but hopefully it does become available because it really is such a lovely mix. Now let's go have a look through the main vegetable patch. I grow a lot of temperate vegetables here in the garden. Lots of onions and brassicas, beans. Although this year I'm really trying to focus on plants that are not going to get too tall because, as you can see from these broad beans, they do get knocked around by the wind a bit. That hasn't stopped these guys from producing. I can see some of the very first pods forming. These are delicious. I'm also doing a lot more polyculture. I've always done polyculture, but this year it's a little bit of this, a little bit of that, just to kind of mitigate risks with pests and disease. So for example, in this bed, I've got peas here on the corner, just a small patch. And then in the back, there's hollyhocks. There's garlic through the center. Then we've got some beetroot down here. This is perennial celery at the back. It's not lovage, which I have over there actually. This is the perennial celery type. And then we've got some rockets. So lots and lots of different things. Over here in this bed, there's elephant garlic underplanted with calendula and borage, which seeded themselves actually. These are onions from last year, and I've just left them. I've been harvesting them all winter for green onions, and then I'm letting them go to seed. And then we've got a small patch of lettuce, and then one of my favorite root veggies, kohlrabi. And they are starting to swell up beautifully. The entire garden is this smorgasbord of vegetables and herbs and flowers and perennials. And I like it this way. It's much more fun. And as everything comes in, it's going to look amazing. So we've got a dahlia here at the end of this bed, some dwarf French beans, a courgette. This here is a parsnip from last year, and I'm letting it go to seed so that I can collect the seeds for next year. Calendula. This bed also has that thing going on. So we've got spinach down the top, and then just below it, kind of benefiting from the shade, we've got celeriac, which is another gorgeous root vegetable, needs a long time to grow. We've also got fennel here. So this is bulb fennel as opposed to the leafy fennel. And I've not grown it before because I didn't think that I liked it, but I tried it again recently, and so I'm growing it. And then we've got zinnias. So I've got quite a few zinnias in this bed too, just for a splash of color and to attract wildlife. The strawberry bed has really benefited from the hot and dry weather we got this spring. So April and May, they were unseasonably warm. And I think because of that, practically every flower has set into fruit. and they are getting nibbled. So I'm gonna have to come in here and lift some of these strawberries up. But even with the ones that are nibbled, you can tell we are going to be getting some pretty epic harvests this year. This absolutely massive bush of a brassica is perennial kale, and it is prolific. The leaves can be a bit leathery, the more mature ones, but the younger ones, like this here, can be quite nice. And then I've got some rhubarb here. There are so many plants in this garden. Honestly, this time of the year and then going into summer, we just have so much coming out of the garden. It's incredible. And I do try to preserve a lot of it. So I freeze a lot of things. I have a pressure canner, which I'm learning to use. But the amount of fresh food that we can get from this space is just mind-blowing. Which brings me to this patch down here. I put in a couple of rows of lavender. So I'm creating a lavender hedge on either side of this bed. And I just decided that I'm going to plant the center of it with potatoes, just to kind of cover the space, stop weeds from forming around my lavender. And they are starting to bloom. And that could mean only one thing. Many early varieties of potatoes will form flowers when they have good size baby potatoes ready to harvest. And so this is one sign that you can use to know when it's time for potatoes to be dug up. And if you've never smelt a potato flower before, have a smell as well, because some of them smell just absolutely gorgeous. So you could save the flower to put in a vase inside because it is very fragrant, and then dig up your potatoes. So I use a fork. Some no-dig people, so no-dig gardeners, will just pull them out, but I just kind of lever them a little bit, about a foot away from the plant, and hopefully we've got some potatoes here. Oh yes, I can see a few right now. There's a good healthy meal right there. Nice, soft, tender skins. Wherever you look around the house, there are plants growing. Of course, there are some spaces around the house, like the greenhouse, which is the propagation center of the garden. So there's lots of seedlings in there right now, along with some summer crops, like tomatoes in the self-watering planters. They're in there. On the deck, I've got the veggie pods, and that is where I'm growing the majority of our lettuce this year. There are tons of radishes in there at the moment, which I'll be harvesting and then fermenting. There's cilantro, coriander in there, spinach, rocket, all sorts. And I think also, not only is it that we've been here for 4 years and some of the big projects are complete now, so like building the Polycrub and building beds and things like that, but I've been using the Forecourt Garden planning app, and in winter, I used it to lay out the garden space and kind of decide where I'm going to be planting everything. And the reality is that that gives a really good foundation. So you feel very confident with what you're going to be doing and growing, and you know where all those little seedlings are going to go. And then as you use it, it kind of evolves. So you make decisions on the go that you're going to move things around, but you can go back to the app and move things around there too. And then it helps you to mentally picture the garden and to feel on top of things. And I've spoken to you about it before. It's mainly free to use. So if you sign up, you can have all of the garden planning features for, I think, a certain number of beds. And then there's a paid version, which gives you everything else. But I highly, highly recommend it. And now that we're at the beginning of summer, we need to start thinking about winter crops and autumn crops, even planting for next year. So if you have a spare moment, sign up for Forecourt. It's free, and I'll leave a link down in the video description, and then give it a whirl. So that is the garden in June. It's early June. By the end of the month, the garden's going to be, I guess, exploding compared to now. A lot of those plants will just zoom in size. And so the next garden tour video, which will be in early July, we'll have a look again. If you've got any questions about anything that you've seen, leave me a comment down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.